The network has over 30,000 members across industries, counties, and cultures. Our mission at L&D Global is to collaborate, co-create, and contribute. And towards this end, today we have with us Dr. Nandini Shekhar, who is a very, very eminent personality. She's a passionate and experienced academician and researcher. She's a very friendly and articulate communicator, and this I've seen for myself. And she builds tremendous rapport with her students, enhancing both their learning abilities. She is a CSR consultant. She is an ICF certified executive coach from Ericsson International, Vancouver, Canada. She's a mentor for social sector startups. She's a certified NLP trainer. She's a Dale Carnegie certified trainer, MTI UK certified trainer. She's a certified heartfulness meditation trainer, a Cherry Player Foundation mentor, and a certified design thinking specialist. So without taking any more of your time, I will like to hand over to Dr. Nandini. Welcome, Dr. Nandini, and please go ahead with your session.
Thank you so much, Ankita. It's a real pleasure to be here. My long association with L&D really gives me a very warm feeling. And I remember the days I used to come from Mysore to Bangalore just to be there on the third Saturday at 9 o'clock for our sessions. And it has not only enriched me professionally, but also personally. And I've made a number of friends, like Surya, Smita, Durga, so many of them. So it's a really warm feeling to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. Before we start, I would just like to ponder on a few things. Today's session would just be a nudging in a particular direction. We, as human beings, what we do is we generally have attempted to study the flow of a mighty river by just taking a bucket of water out, studying it in detail, and then generalizing about the whole river. But today's field of education, and I dare say the L&D space is also similar, is we generalize the whole thing by looking at a small specialization. But we as educationists or L&D practitioners we are tasked with this great burden of sculpting the future generation. So in that spirit, I invite you to the session to be the experiment, to be the experimenter, and to be the experimented upon in today's session. And I would say that you put the pail of water back into the river and let us observe the river, in its whole, with a great sense of wonder. So with this, I would like to just begin my session. So what are the ways of knowing? Generally, how do we know things? One is the rational, which involves calculation, explanation, analysis, which we are all very familiar with and which we do day in and day out. The second is the sensory, the observation, the measuring of the knowing. Today we have scales for measuring every possible thing, even what we thought we couldn't measure. So these together form the rational empirical approach that has set the standard today for knowledge across all disciplines, as we know. Heartfulness, or the heartful way of knowing, has been recognized across time, culture, disciplines as the most essential pursuit to knowledge and wisdom. Yet from today's pedagogy, whether it be in the classroom or whether it be in the the learning and development space, that is totally absent. I'm sure all of you will agree with this. Let us look today at a third way of knowing. Today I'm going to talk about heartful knowing or contemplation. what is today's agenda? Today we're going to explore firstly about what is this brief orientation towards heartful knowing. What is the current status of research on the impact of contemplation on learner development? This is what I would like to focus on today. Why it becomes important to have heartful knowing as a third complement of knowing. And then I want to share with you a few practical techniques to integrate this into our learning schedules, because it is not enough to understand that there are gaps in learning, but how do we utilize this? How do we take this ahead is, a structured way of using this is what is required. And today I would attempt to put forth this for your perusal. So let's all look at it in an open way. So today's gaps, what we understand in this is that, as we just spoke, from Mozart to Einstein, everybody has had another way of knowing in addition to the rational and sensory. And they are extremely important to explain the depths of creativity and insights that are obtained. So imagination, inspiration, and insight. So these are the three things that we cannot get by either the rational way or the sensory way. What really happened historically was the Aristotelian emphasis on logic helped elbow this contemplator totally out of favor. The Western way of thinking for enhancing efficiency, speed, productivity, it helped to push this contemplative all to the sidelines. I'm sure all of you who are there, educators and L&D specialists, will agree with me that we are just given a mandate to complete a particular topic, and we are very happy when we've just done that. We don't even realize to pause and take questions, or even we don't have the time to get into the deeper knowing of that particular subject. So with this in mind, let's look at what exactly is heartful knowing and why this offers us a fresh lens to view our world, our sense of self, and transform relationships. It is said that it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. I'm sure you all will agree with me on this. Like, for example, the most essential thing, what we say as air, it is definitely invisible to the eye, but it is most essential. You can live without food, you can live without water for some time, but without air, you can't. So the essential, the most important thing is always subtle, is always hidden, and it waits for us to discover it. So heartful knowing, or what we call as contemplation, it actually complements the rational and sensory way of knowing. It is not instead of. Let us be very clear with this. There are three aspects of knowing. I'm going again to it. There are three aspects of knowing. One is the rational, the other is the sensory, and the third is contemplation or heartful knowing. This way of integration of these three things will really help us to understand and gain stupendous insights into the mundane things that we really do. I'm very fascinated today with this word integration. Today, in this current situation that we are in, I think we deeply appreciate what this integration really is. You're integrating your outside and your inside. Being at home, you have to integrate your work and your home in such a harmonious way. There's integration of this begins with the self, goes to the family, goes to the society, and to the country and to the world. Today I was reading something which said that just 1 gram of virus, the total weight of the virus that is there across the whole world, is just 1 gram. And this 1 gram of virus has been able to bring the entire world to its knees. So you can imagine what understanding or knowing the inner, knowing the contemplation, what this thing can do to your entire existence. This is what we are being nudged towards today, that until we know, it's like we will be with the same processes, the same filters, the same way of thinking. So the fresh lens to view our world and a sense of self and transformed relationships is that what we are looking at today. So how do you activate this heartful knowing? I will show you, I will discuss with you a few aspects of research that is being done, and it's astounding what the results can be. This, as of now, we can just stay with this, that heartful knowing is activated through a wide range of approaches designed to quiet and shift this habitual chatter of the mind and to cultivate a deepened awareness, concentration, and insight. We all know what this habitual chatter of the mind does to us. The mind has formed ruts or deep crevices into which we always, the thought flows. Whatever the situation, we are looking at it from the lens that we have already experienced. So how do I get out of this chatter, get out of this lens, and how do I look, get out of this chatter, get out of this view, and then how do I take a fresh view is what is really, really, I think, the crux of today's problem. Let us reflect on this aspect. Today, all of us are at home and we are, I think, with an overdose of cooking. I mean, without even not being able to order or go out to eat, we're all cooking and cooking and cooking. We all know, even the kids who are cooking, that if you need to cook 3 cups of rice, just that pinch of salt is enough. The same thing, if you look up, the size of the bulbs to the room is 1 to at least 5,000. Which just shows the enormity of the subtle, which we have pushed not only to the sideline, but we have just taken it out of our life. So this is this is what I would like to say. This is what I would like to emphasize, that why the subtle is, sorry, why the subtle is so important and gaining so much importance, and what we need to relook at. So in the short time that I have, just the 45 minutes, I need to really cover a lot. So I'm not being able to go into a great, because this is a very amoebic, humongous topic, and which cannot be actually even grasped in entire lifetime, but I'm just trying to put it into a 45-minute session. So please bear with me. So let us look at this missing link here, which is heartful knowing. How does it contribute to learning and development? So any endeavor of learning and development is basically 3. One is performance improvement, enhancing performance, getting super performance, success and blah, whatever have you. We have many examples in mind right now. Think of Satyam Computers, if you think of Vijay Mallya, if you think of recently Joy Oracle, if you think of so many, Nirav Modi, anybody, performance-wise, oh my God, what are the returns for the investors? Astounding. Okay, so performance, this is what we're looking at. One of the things that is very important for any learning and development. Second thing is character. We all know about how important character is. Again, if we take the examples that I just quoted, Satyam Computers, Nirav Modi, Vijay Mallya, we all know what is the lacuna there. So another person which deeply affects me, because I used to always give his examples in my management to my management students, is of Siddhartha of Cafe Coffee Day. The number of people he could employ and could really raise their standards of living. So where is the question of character here? Here the question arises whether character development is only the role of the family, Is it the role of the parents? Is it the role only of, the immediate society that the person lives in? Or is it also a part of us as educators? Is it important for us also to do something to build character? This is actually a debating point. I mean, many people in the West say we should not touch character because that is what is, the role of the parents, and the parents come in the way of, no, we will do this at home. You don't have to do this. But is that the real answer that needs to be really debated? Because the student spends more time in school with his peers and his teachers rather than at home. When he goes home, there's nobody there. So who's responsible for that character building? So let's again come back to say that the concern of learning and development again is very important: performance, character, and the third one, which interests me a lot today and on which we are doing a bit of research as a part of a think tank, is the depth. What do you understand by depth? Many of the people who teach MBA students, or for that matter, any of the students, even engineering, medical, anything, will understand that we have so many students who have are on the top. They are, first rankers. They are super throughout. But when you give them a very, very simple problem to solve and analyze, they are not able to even grasp that problem, or to how do you apply what you have learned into that. I know of a finance student who was top in finance, who after getting a job comes back to me and says, "Ma'am, I don't even know how to fill this KYC, know your customer. I don't know how to fill this form with my customers." And he was dealing in some mutual funds. "I don't know how to enter this. I don't know what to do." I mean, like, where is the application of what all you have studied? So that is another very, very important issue for us. So these are the three things that we gather as very important in and for any educator to develop, or for any learning and development specialist to see that these three things are honed. So let us understand that all the above parameters of learning are tied to attention. So I leave you with a lot of questions today, because many of them have to be answered by yourselves. So today is just a nudge in a particular direction. You may or may not agree. So these parameters are all tied to attention. So let us look at what this depth is. Depth, as I just told you, is a very deeper understanding and application of the issues at hand. Example, Steve Jobs. Example, Elon Musk. We all understand how they just don't look at a thing in isolation. They look at a thing, at any given issue in, with a very deep understanding, and how they can apply it from anywhere to anywhere, is amazing. So we just talked about this, and there is a lot of research done. I've quoted some research papers, and we all understand today about emotional intelligence, design thinking, human-centered thinking, decision-making, creativity, innovation. All these things we are talking in a textbook wise. The moment we say that, how do we apply this? How do we apply design thinking concept? How do we apply emotional intelligence? Actually, I'm also a culprit in this, because I used to teach a lot of emotional intelligence. And I think about 15 days ago, I had, 3 or 4 of us got together, and the person who really does this very well, he again explained to us all the concepts of emotional intelligence, and I was astounded at what really opened up before me. The self-awareness component and the self-management component of EI. Self-awareness is very easy, but the self-management, when I'm aware but I'm still unable to manage myself, I think that is the crux of what today's issues all of us are facing. We are all aware we are not supposed to go out. We are not aware. We're all aware about so many things, but how do I manage myself is a question we really need to ask. So So I would talk about this inner technology of knowing, or what we call as, a few of us call as the mind science. We talk of all sorts of sciences, but that small inner thing within us, which is responsible for everything outside us, is neglected. The science of the mind is neglected. How can I control my mind? How can I allow it to roam? How can I focus it on one point? Is, the expansion, contraction. How can I do that to apply my mind wherever I want? I think that is the crux of any learning and development, any education. So how this was actually gained was, this many ways of doing this is knowing through silence, looking inward, pondering deeply, just simply beholding or witnessing the contents of our consciousness from time to time. Now, here I would like to quote very simply an experiment that was done in Taiwan in 2001. Here, 362 students were randomly assigned to 3 groups. One group did transcendental meditation, the second group did a traditional Chinese meditation, and the third group just napped. Because, people say that if you allow your mind to rest for some time by napping, you can get newer insights. So this was trying to be proved, whether napping also is a way of knowing. Okay, but here what we found out was that the results showed a significant increase in 7 standard measures in the first group that did transcendental meditation, 2 measures for the second, and none for the third. So what does this tell us? That the distinction between the scores of those napping and those in the meditation groups reminds us that heartful knowing or contemplative practice involves more than simply relaxation. It includes relaxation and an open or focused alertness. So what I would like to posit here is that we need to be relaxed, which we never allow our students to be there. If you can see them, and if you can look, show the mirror to yourselves, we're always tensed. So we need to be relaxed, allow our body to relax so that the mind relaxes. And how do we allow the mind to relax is in a little bit of a structured way, so that you can have this open or this focused alertness as you would want. Toggle between open and focused, open and focused. So this, many people have said, is the essence of application, is the essence of depth, is the essence of really knowing something. So if we come to the actual, if we apply it to ourselves, how can I be a better whatever? Better trainer, better teacher, better doctor, engineer, dancer, lawyer, whatever. So we talked of integration, that in addition to your performance, in addition to your character, this should also be, the depth should also be integrated. So do I know where exactly to hammer? I'm sure many of you know of the story of the boiler in the ship, where nobody could know how do you repair that boiler, and they called so many management experts, they called so many people, and they all came in, and nobody knew what to do about it. And then finally they called some old guy, retired guy living somewhere, and he comes in with a small bag, and he looks at the whole ship and he says, just allow me to be by myself and examine the whole ship. And he examines the whole ship, and he takes out after some time, takes out his hammer, and he just taps in one place. And then he sends, and the boiler just starts working, the ship just starts working. And then he sends a very fat bill. So the manager asks, why is all that he did was use the hammer once? Why do you give me such a huge bill? So he says, for using the hammer, it's just $1. But to know exactly where to hammer, exactly where to tap, is the rest of the bill, whatever, $100,000 or whatever. So, I mean, do we know exactly where to hammer when we are, in the we need to apply what we really have learned. So here I would like to stop this the theoretical part which I'm been trying to explain, and take you through 3 thought experiments which I thought would be pretty short and would be able to put something where you will be able to apply it for yourself and for whomever you would like to. So very small 3 experiments. So I hope it's okay for me to take you through this. Just remember that the contemplative mind cannot be willed as it arises spontaneously, but it can be welcomed. This is a very, very important aspect to remember, because as we, study so many things by rote, we can will ourselves to study it. But if you cannot will the contemplative mind to work, you need to be just without your filters and be at rest, and when it spontaneously arises. There are lots and lots and lots of examples for this, but I will skip that for now. And here I will take you through 3 thought experiments. The intent here is to expand awareness and push beyond our own assumptions and our sedimented habits of knowing, the usual ways of knowing. So the first experiment is, where are you now? You can use this always. I'm sure many of you use it also, but you can use this always with your students and with yourself. It's a slightly different focus which can nourish self-awareness and presence. So where are you now? We can repeatedly ask ourselves and our class, our audience. So I will just go through this experiment. Take a few moments and just relax. Take a few deep breaths. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. And tune into where you are right in this moment. Are you thinking about the day ahead? Are you rehearsing some past experience? Are you caught in an emotional hangover about a situation? How much of you is in your body and how much of you is in your head? How much of you is floating outside you? Do you feel you are in you or in front of you? Are you stuck in some painful nook? Just be aware about this for a few moments, just noticing where you are and how that feels. So this is an experiment, which you can keep doing with yourself often to check where you are right now, and to get yourself into the present whenever your attention to anything is wavering. The second one I would like to say is the mentor's table. Many of us as coaches know it. And why I'm including this is I just wonder often if Siddhartha of CCD or if Joy Arakal had really had access to the mentor's table, would they have been done something differently? Is what always bothers me. Mentor's table is a technique, again, a thought process where we imagine, because imagination is a very powerful thing. We all know that. Where we virtually imagine 3 people in our lives whom we invite to the coffee table. 3 people who have had the maximum influence, or whom we really, really, respect a lot, or whose opinion matters a lot to us. If we get them to the table, and if we put the present situation that we are in front of them, what would they say? So the person can be dead or alive, or the person can be some famous character. Suppose you are very fond of, say, Nikola Tesla, you can invite him to the table and just put your question in front of him and just see what you think he would say. And I'm telling you, this is a very, very, very powerful technique that can yield amazing results. So This is another thing that you can Google it and find out this Mentor's table and use it often with the people who are struggling, or with yourself, or when you take some crucial decisions, whether, you know, how would people really approve of this, whether, even if the person is dead, alive, whoever. So that is Mentor's table in short. And the third thing that I would like to do is, how do I remove the assumptions or the mental filters or all that is blocking my thinking? How do I remove this? Is there a way for me to go deeper into my thinking? Because whenever I try to close my eyes and look inwards, there are always so many things bothering me. Is there a method for me to do a rejuvenation, or can I clean up this whole thing like I would clean my external world? So in the heartfulness way, where I'm one of the spiritual trainers there, we have a very short method we do for about 15 to 20 minutes. And believe me, it has amazing results. So I would like to take you through this technique. So please do this with me. It will, if you can keep doing this often, probably every day for about 10 minutes, it's bound to give you such amazing insights and, you know, a clarity which before was not so easy to get. So if you could just do this with me, sit, relax comfortably, close your eyes gently, focus all your attention on your heart. Just give a thought that all that is blocking my way, all the darkness, the grossness that is not giving me clarity, is leaving my system from the back, from the top of the head to the bottom of the tailbone, in the form of smoke. You can stay with this thought for about 5 minutes. the end, give a thought that the divine current of light is filling my heart and is filling the vacuum that has been left after all the grossness and the darkness and the filters have been removed. With the thought that I'm totally rejuvenated, gently open your eyes. So this, whenever you feel the need, when you are totally agitated, when you are stressed out, when you feel that you lack clarity, when you feel that there's too much happening and you just can't handle it, you're just overwhelmed, that's the time you just sit back and do this. Actually, that's not the only time. If you keep doing these techniques every day, these are just a few of so many others. If you keep, for starters, doing this every day, you will notice that you don't easily get into situations where you are stressed out or where you are under some kind of pressure or where you are not able to decide. It is magical. Let me tell you, it's magical the way the clarity, the joy, the happiness comes to you. Because after all, the end point of human life is only that happiness, that joy, that feeling of being one with everything. May have made many mistakes. We have made many things that are not supposed to be done, and that's why we find ourselves here today. And I'm sure that this is not the end, and this is a way to get ahead. So I would humbly ask you to experiment on this again and again. After all, you don't spend a dime for it, or you don't have to go anywhere for it. You don't need anything for it. It's just you and your thought power. So we can use this again and again, and we can teach it to everybody who's there with us and who needs it. I have found a lot of improvement in this. Then this is what I would like to share. So moving on. So how would this heartful knowing transform the way we teach and we learn? Today's students seek something more. They wish to be transformed, not just informed. We know that information is available everywhere today, and it's just in your palms, all the information that you ever seek. So what is the student really looking for? So people are looking to be transformed. They are not finding it at home. They're not finding it at teachers. With teachers, they're not finding it anywhere. And so this frustration. We need to understand that we are all naturally contemplative beings. If you see a little kid, a 2-year-old can be so contemplative, so much by itself, playing by itself. But the constant pushing, the constant activity that we think is what drives us, what we need to succeed, what we define success with, is really made this, very difficult to keep these contemplative practices alive. And therefore, there is a total unbalance in our ways of knowing, and often we lose touch with the inner landscape, and that's where all the problems arise, because now we understand how the subtle influence of the inner has a major influence on the outer. Just like the subtle pinch of salt can flavor the entire 1 kilo of rice, or the small light bulb lighting the whole space, we know how important the inner is today. So heartful knowing offers us an inner technology, a kind of mind science, enabling us to use more of our faculties unhindered by the habitual responses and our emotional impulsivity. So this is my last slide. This is the conclusion that or the takeaway of today's learnings is that we wish to be informed, I mean, we used to be transformed, not informed, and we're always contemplative. We are naturally contemplative, only that we have forgotten about it. And here, heartful knowing, or the heartfulness meditation, whatever you want to call it, it offers an inner technology. How can I balance my inner and outer? How can I integrate all three: performance, character, and depth? And how can I be a better whatever I am? A better human being, a better parent, a better professional, whatever. So I had the slide today that I just saw in Facebook. Your thoughts and emotions are like a waterfall pouring over you, crushing you, preventing you to see anything clearly. Imagine stepping away from the waterfall and gently observing it without judgment. In that moment, you can enjoy the beautiful view while released from the weight of the pouring water. I think that kind of sums up the whole thing. And for any information, you can always visit www.heartfulness.org. There are a lot of people to help you out there and a lot of information out there. And here is my contact details. Anybody would, I'll be very glad to support anybody who's looking for any kind of a support. And that's my.
Thank you, Dr. Nandini. That was the most contemplative and beautiful sessions that I have attended in some time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming over. Thank you for giving that little bit of clarity and giving that little bit of insight and a direction to where we can focus our thoughts and where should we focus our efforts towards cleansing and rejuvenation and heartfulness. So I'm very happy to be part of your session.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We have a few questions, and I would like to ask each of the participants who has posted a question to unmute, and I'll start with Smita. Smita has posted one question. Smita, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Nandini, thank you so much. I had a very basic, simple question. So as parents, what does one do, to make sure that this heartful knowing, learning at every step, right from the time, every day, some simple thing. Is there something like that we can make it a part of our life every day?
Yeah, first thing I would like to say is the parents, as parents, the children very close. So we don't realize right from when they're 2, if you see that I'm looking at my grandkids, how closely they observe you. So firstly, it's important for us to be that before we expect our children to be that. Because they can easily point out and say, it's like you do something else and you are asking me to do something else. That apart, what can we do every day? Every day we can put in a kind of, for the, I told you, where am I now? It's a very, very simple practice where even if you are driving, if you are, in the kitchen, if you're doing anything, you can always use that activity saying, where am I now? Am I floating outside? Am I in my body? Am I in my head? Am I in my heart? Where am I now? And you can get back to focus wherever whenever you want. That is one thing. It's very important. And the second thing is the heartfulness practices that we have are extremely simple, done every day with a minimum amount of time. It gives amazing results. The sense of the burden is just lifted. I can't tell you in words unless you practice that. So, you feel that lightness, you feel that you can take on anything in this world. That's the kind of confidence you live by, and that's the kind of the clarity you have, the kind of inspiration. I like to use that word again and again. You can't just live as a recluse. You can't just live as somebody outside. How do you balance both the inner and outer is extremely crucial, extremely tricky. So I have found this. I mean, there may be other methods. I don't know. But I have found this as a very, very powerful method of using this again and again. Anyway, practice makes it perfect. Everybody knows. I think that is what I would like to say.
Thanks, Nandini.
Thank you, Smita. That was a great question. And I think, Dr. Nandini, you have given a very useful answer and a very practicable answer. So with that, I would ask Dr. Vasanthi Reena Williams. She has also posted, can you, Dr. Williams, can you unmute yourself and ask your questions so that Dr. Nandini can answer you directly? Can you do that?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Nandini. It was a wonderful session. I especially liked the
Not audible. I don't even know who's speaking. I mean, it's not audible.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, better.
Yeah. So thank you, Nandini. This is Reena here. And I especially liked the three thought experiment of that. I like the second one, the mentor's table. That was wonderful. As you rightly mentioned, we are following sedimented habits. Now we are talking about education. So we have students coming from different backgrounds and culture. So how would it be possible to get all of them to understand from the same perspective that we would like them to understand?
Yeah, that's a very nice question. Let me tell you one thing, that this is something that cuts across culture, cuts across background, cuts across whatever, even the family, the religion, blah blah. You name it, and it. That's why I think it's amazing, because not only is it using yourself and your thought. So what are you really worried about? I mean, it's nothing to do with culture. It's nothing to do with anything. It's just a thought with yourself. So whatever the mentality you say, whatever the mentality, does it really matter? I mean, you're just teaching them, you're integrating this into your daily curriculum. If you start a class with saying like, where are you now? You again, after every say every half an hour, you can feel that the class is not attentive. You can feel that we as educators from so many years, we know that we can just feel it. I mean, can we not put them through this practice for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes in the beginning? You will realize that 2 or 3 minutes sitting still is a big thing in the initial stages for them. But they will not realize that they have sat still. I have done these experiments with so many people now, I have lost count. And also with many, many people in the corporate sector. Who, for example, I will tell you a recent example of Reliance Jio. People just cannot sit still there. They have so many things to do, just cannot sit still. But when you put them through this, they don't realize that 1 hour has passed. Half an hour of meditation they have done, and they just feel like they've just come fresh to work. I mean, this is cutting across everything, your educational background or your family background or your culture or your religion or anything. That's where I feel the importance and the value of this lies.
Thank you, Nandini.
Have I answered you adequately?
Yes. I mean, I'll see. I'm not into this, and I'm just getting into understanding the concept. I understand the suggestions you gave, like the 5 minutes, make them understand, and then pull them towards you, and then I think that's a good way of making them, get into one, mindset. That's a good suggestion. Thank you, Nandini.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reena. I would like to probably link this, Dr. Nandini, to a thought that in schools, the students, what is their immediate takeaway? Because these days everything is about results, and how can you link whatever your actions are to quantifiable, measurable outcomes. So what is the immediate takeaway for students if a teacher asks them to do this centering exercise or heartfulness exercise in the classroom for 2 minutes?
What I would say is that when you try this, I think the teacher, first of all, the teachers need to be centered. Everything begins with the self. Let me make that very clear. If the teacher is distracted with the phone, with something else, with chatting, and she expects the class to be doing the centering exercise, it doesn't make sense at all. Having said that, I would say that the takeaway for the students, I mean, there are a lot of research happening, and as I told you, I'm a part of a think tank which is, trying to integrate this heartful knowing into several disciplines like management or into engineering or into schools or undergraduate studies. How do we integrate this to make them better students, make them better at what they're doing? So what I would say is that if the teachers can try it out themselves, and find out for themselves like what is happening with their students, I would say the immediate takeaway for the student is that they will definitely calm down. They will definitely, become slightly more receptive, and done on a regular basis. Meditation, I mean, there's scores of studies that are being done today. You don't have to, I mean, it's not something religious, because once you get into that religious thing, then all the secular blah blah comes into picture. So it's got nothing to do with that. You want to focus on something internal, focus on a divine light, which has got absolutely no religion. So when you focus on that divine light, so you've got something to focus on, because the mind is such that it cannot stay without some object to associate with. So once you're doing that, I think automatically you just calm down. You can feel it. I mean, these are things that today they're trying to quantify it using EEGs and things like that, how the mind is calming down. But it is happening. And slowly the revolution is happening, that we have to get these into schools, into teaching, into L&D, into ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I have one more question. Shilpi, can you unmute yourself? Shilpi, are you here? Shilpi, can you ask your question?
Yes, Dr. Nandini, it was extremely inspiring whatever we have gone through today.
Thank you.
So Dr. Nandini, a very pertinent question I'm going to ask. In the post-COVID world, where a lot of things are going to change, and online teaching and training will become a norm. And this is how we perceive it. How effectively can we apply heartful education? How effectively?
Like I just told you, this heartful education, it cuts across everything. So whether they're online or whether you're offline, hardly matter. Whether you're face to face, it really doesn't matter, because even online today we can do these sessions. Actually, I could have gone in for, because of the time constraint, I did. Otherwise, we could have gone in for the session for half an hour. So it doesn't really matter where you are. What it matters is, in fact, post-COVID, you will need more of this, more of centering within yourself, more of ability to handle change. Because the only thing today that is prominent is fear. If you see, everywhere it is fear. What are we afraid of? We're afraid of change, afraid of getting out of our comfort zone so much that we don't have any anchor to what we used to know.
Right.
I mean, we are just afraid. So how do we get over this? How do we get over, unless you are centered, unless you are anchored within yourself, this external, this thing, can just sway you, just take you away from where to where, God only knows. So the only thing that we can do right now is, with the children, with the family, with ourselves, is how do we keep ourselves together, integrate? How do we keep ourselves within, centered? How do we have, now everything is definitely going to change, and what everybody says, right from not just education, but everything we're going to be doing online. How much of it is really good to do online? Because I'm telling you, there is Zoom fatigue. Everybody is on Zoom and everybody's. So is there a way we really need to balance? I mean, we really need to think about this. Either we are going this way or we are going that way extreme. So we need to really balance this, and there are no set guidelines and rules. We have to develop it ourselves. Once we know that this is to be done, then how do we get there is which ship we take. Do we take the ship, or do we take a flight, or do we take the car, or do we walk? When I know my destination is inside, what do I do? So that is for each one of us to figure out, and I think we are always guided, only that we are not open enough for the guidance. So that this is not it's not about any religion. It's not about anything. It's just you're being guided. I mean, who cares what religion you can come from? You can come from anywhere, but the guidance is the same. So I think that is there for everybody, and I think the goalposts are there. And the goalposts are nowhere outside. Success is nowhere outside now. The new paradigm of success is within. So everybody says go inside. So how do I go inside is the question. So how? There is the method. So do I really need to go inside? Whom do I, teach this to? What should I do? First, you try it yourself. Once you know it, you're inspired by it. Others automatically get inspired, and there's that wave of change. I mean, that's what is inevitable. That's how it looks, at least today.
Perfect. I think it means amazing answer, and it has means a lot of deep thinking. I think each one of us have to do, being where we are right now. Amazing. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shilpi, for the question.
Thank you.
And Dr. Nandini, I, for one, am taking a little bit of courage with me today from your session. I found courage now that the scary thing is not looking outside, the scary thing is looking inside, and we should make concerted efforts to do just that. And that is how we will cross over this current crisis also. And that is the way to, heartfulness is the way forward for and for success. And I'm really grateful to you today for having this session, for giving these insights.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, participants. I'm very happy that you all were able to join. We will end the session now. And I look forward to another L&D Lockdown 3.0 series very soon, and we'll keep you posted. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.